So hey everyone, how are we all doing? My name's Carl. I started this channel off back end of last year. The plan was to kind of talk about sort of personal development for people in their kind of 40s and how you can kind of turn your life around just on experiences I've had. But then I actually had a bit of a bolt out of the blue. Scarily, I think it was in August it all started happening, where I went on consultation at my current job at the time and then was very quickly made redundant. Now, I've been made redundant twice in the past 4 years. The first time round was because of COVID and kind of made sense. Everyone was kind of in the same boat. And the second time was from the last employer. I've been with them 3 years. And to be honest, no idea why it really happened. Talk about a restructure, something like that. But you know how these things are. When it all happened, I was kind of positive. I've done the usual stuff where you kind of go on LinkedIn, say you're looking for new opportunity, and a few things come up. But then actually, when you sort of chase those leads, nothing really materialised. And I get to today, and I'm kind of, nearly 5 months on from when it all happened, and I've still had absolutely zero luck in trying to find the next sort of job. And it's not for the want of trying. I've been applying for all sorts all over the place, but just had absolutely zero luck, even on kind of smaller part-time jobs. Now I'm curious, have you found something similar? Now I get it. I think probably the back end of last year, I was on a few months garden leave, and then by the time I kind of started properly looking, it was kind of back end of the year into Christmas. And maybe now still, it's only sort of January, people are still sort of waking up in the new year. But I have to say, it feels very different this time. And when I've had interviews and I've kind of got into companies, the one thing I notice is a lot of the time I seem to be sort of the oldest person there. You have candidates or even people to see in the office. I am one of the oldest there, and I'm only 45, riding on 46 very quickly, and that's scary. So I kind of want to talk about, really, I guess, is ageism a thing still? Well, in fact, I know it is. But really and truly, does it come into play when you're 40s? Because my God, most of you like me, there's no way I can afford to retire right now. No way. I've got probably realistically another 20 odd years of working, if not more. So what are we supposed to do when we get maybe redundant in our 40s? So I'm curious, are you going through the similar thing right now, and have you found it? What's been your experience? I kind of want to take a deeper dive into sort of my thoughts on what I've seen over the past few months. So when I look back at my career, I've been made redundant 3 times. The first time was in 2002 when I was only about 23. It was fantastic, to be honest. I was made redundant. I was gutted because I actually loved the company I worked for at the time and the people I worked with, more importantly. But I had a great boss at the time who literally frog marched me out of the office across the road to one of our competitors and had me an interview 2 days later, and I was back in work by the following Monday. It was fantastic, and I come away with all that redundancy money. So the second time, as I mentioned, was through COVID, and that was kind of, everyone was kind of in the same boat back then, to be totally honest. I think most of us were in a pretty bad situation back then. I was made out of work, I think it was about May 2020. I then done the whole homeschooling thing for a little bit because we had no one to cover that. And then I managed to get a little part-time job in the October, which saw me through until the following year when I got back into work in a full-time role. And actually the job I got in August 21 was actually a promotion in the same industry. So I was kind of, again, happy with that. And yeah, it was a pretty good result. This time it's been a totally different experience. And the only thing that I see is kind of different is my age. My qualifications haven't changed. The industry hasn't changed. There are roles still advertised that my experience suits. However, I don't get a look in. And the only difference is my age. So there's got to be something there. And actually, I was speaking to a friend over Christmas who sort of anecdotally, I won't mention names, said to me that his company actually won't look to employ someone over 45. It's obviously, of course, not written down anywhere officially, but these conversations have actually happened that they don't want anyone over 45 for whatever reason. Whether it's because we're more expensive, whether it is we sort of take, dare I say it, less shit than other people. I generally don't know. So I've been looking at different options. So I've tried all the corporate roles, and these are the big ones that sort of make sense. You see the jobs advertised, and I'm applying for these. And obviously you go through the usual kind of application process, whether that's through LinkedIn or the website. You send in your CV and your covering letter, which I've had checked over, they're all good. They go off to the HR department, and then more often than not, you get completely ghosted. You hear nothing back, not even a no thank you. Then on the rare occasions that you do hear back, it's that you actually have too much experience. But then you think, okay, fair enough. So you look at the job application again, look at the experience you've put through on your CV. And of course, some of these things, when you sort of look at some of these roles, you take out some bits so you don't look overqualified. Your details match what they're looking for, yet they're still saying you're overexperienced. Now, is that just an excuse to say you're too old? Because I can't help thinking it probably is. That seems to be all the big corporate roles at the moment. And it does seem to be a pretty big problem. So a lot of people have told me to take my age off my CV, which I've done that now. But then you've only got to look a little bit further down my CV and look at work experience, where I started work in 96, and very quickly you can work out my age, I guess. Now, friends told me that you need to take off a certain amount of like your previous experience, to take off the jobs you were doing, and then just sort of do a generic experience section. So it hides kind of when you started work. However, I can't help thinking by doing that, I'm going to rock up to an interview. They're going to be expecting sort of a 30-year-old or something, and they're going to find me a 45-year-old. So am I only sort of then delaying what's actually going to happen at the interview anyhow, where they'll filter me at that point? I don't know. They have got an issue with age. Getting the interview almost feels like a bit of a waste of time. Although I do guess if you get in front of them, maybe you can prove your experience, but I'm not totally convinced that's a thing anymore. Does experience really count? I'm not sure if it does. Then there's the idea of a career change, and you think, well, that could be something I can do. So you look at sort of different jobs and different industries and where your transferable skills sort of sit. And there's definitely things I've applied for that you think, yeah, I've got the skills that kind of match what they're looking for. But then I think you're up against students who are fresh out of uni, who will be, one, a lot cheaper, and probably to companies' eyes more suited to a sort of starter role as such. And then if you're honest with yourself, you look at it and go, well, okay, this is great. I can go and start again. But then I've got to start on a major like entry level role salary, which is okay when you're in your 20s, whatever, living at home or kind of haven't got as many commitments. But when you're a family man and you've got a kid, mortgage and everything else to pay, you know, it's going to be really hard to live on that entry level salary, because the jobs I'll be going for aren't going to be like city banker roles or anything like that. They're going to be kind of more sort of low key roles. So how are you meant to survive on that kind of money? And let's be realistic, you know, it took me a good, 5 to 10 years to start getting decent money in the industry I was in, and that's grown over time. So to go back to square one, I don't think you'd ever really fully recover. And again, I think even accepting that even though I was really up for it and found the job that I loved to go and do, I'm just not convinced they would accept a middle-aged man this day and age. Again, just from my experience and what I've seen and sort of feedback I've had. Then I had the thought of, well, if I'm sort of forced into this corner of no one giving me any work, do I need to go and work for myself? As I said, I've got to work for the next 20 years. I've got to find a way of making some money. And I have got a little side business that I started last year. It's only small, and it's certainly not anywhere near a salary I would need to earn. But over the course of a year or so, it could actually probably grow into a great thing if I put my time and attention onto it and the experience. But where I am now, and where that business actually starts bringing an income, I still need to make some money. I've quickly burnt through my savings, so ultimately I can't sit here for much longer having no income. So I thought to myself, do I look at freelancing in my own industry? Do I kind of try and sell my experience by the day or by the hour? Now, I'm not kind of an IT guru and like that. I won't go into the industry I'm in, but it's quite niche. So I'm not sure how much requirement there'll be for freelance, but I'm going to sort of try. Or the other thought I had is, do I look at something like Uber Eats or Deliveroo? I did look at Uber, but I think my car's quite an old car, so I would need to replace it with something more modern. And I'm not convinced by the time I pay the lease rate and insurance, I'll actually make any money from it. I need to kind of say a bit more that I can use my current car in. So Deliveroo and Uber Eats, I think you could do it in an older car. And then is that a way of bringing some money coming in? Again, I can't believe I'm coming around to doing this at the sort of this stage of my career, that I'm having to sort of consider, you know, really starting again. I'm not going to lie, it's not been easy, and the past sort of 5 months have been a lesson that you really are not safe doing what you do, and it does come out of the blue. So I'll round it up there. I apologise about all the ums and ahs. This is my first kind of video I've done like this, and I just want to get it done and kind of get used to doing it. So I hope that'll improve. I will try and edit some out if I can actually do that. Likewise, if there's a bit of camera shake, I'm really, really sorry. My arm is now literally killing me. I've quite got used to holding a sort of selfie stick for this long. My arm is shaking, so hopefully the camera hides it. If not, I apologise. Going forward, I'm going to talk about the sort of journey, how things are going, things I find out on this sort of journey of trying to find a job or starting a business. I also want to talk about the reason I started this channel was kind of personal development and sort of growth in your 40s and 50s, and how you can kind of build a life that you want. I honestly did not expect this job loss to kind of create the content for this channel, but I do think there's probably other people out there going for the same thing. And since a job's pretty much one of the foundational things in life, when it does get taken from you, it does leave a bit of a space. And I think especially at our age, when there's that worry of kind of what do we do next, it does leave a bit of anxiety, that's for sure. So yeah, do comment below the questions I've sort of mentioned, and please follow if you find this useful. As I say, I'd love to build some kind of community out of this at some point. As I say, I generally don't think we're on our own here. And I'm talking about guys, I guess, at this point in time, but I suspect there's ladies out there going through exactly the same thing right now. Again, be really curious to know about that. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. If you've got this far, please do subscribe. I promise you these videos will get better. So that's it. Thanks so much. Cheers.